Episode 283, special guest, head coach of the Vancouver Titans. Call me biased, but my favorite team coming into the preseason, the offseason, the Pro-Am, it's Ascoft. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for the compliment.
Best team. Best team.
Yeah.
Top 7. Future Lord.
At the very least.
At the very least. At the very least. You hear that, Yiska? At the very least.
Look, the pendulum has been swinging back in my favor, my guy. Like, the thing is, okay, so I'm probably 2 pendulum swings ahead of the public in that, because like 1 pendulum swing is going to hit soon in terms of like what is going to help you, and then it swings back, my dude. There's a team that we all thought was garbage that's suddenly not as garbage, and I'm gaining confidence.
Hey, cope however hard you need to, okay? You huff whatever you need to get through the day. All I know is established bets, established Lord titles, whatever the hell that company is. I'm getting one, okay? I'm getting a small plot of land in Scotland, and I will be a laird, okay? That's all I know.
Yeah.
Outside of that, Ascoft, like, there's we were kind of talking prior to the show, but you know, there's not a ton kind of for you guys to do right now. So like, what are you doing? What, like, are you having hobbies that you're getting into? Like, what's going on in the off season for you right at this kind of
hobbies? Yeah, so yeah, we were discussing it off, but I went to Vancouver for a couple of days with my girlfriend just to see how it was. Pretty cool city, very good facilities and everything. The people there are very nice. The people I'm going to work with, I mean. Aside from that, you know, I just try to keep myself busy. Right now, it's the moment where I feel like I should involve myself much more in like getting back into Overwatch and everything. So I'm getting some tier 2 VODs, trying to understand what's the meta right now. I'm talking to my players about, you know, just setting up the stage for like the seasons to start. So we're gonna have our talk about team talks, established team values, individual talk with the players and everything, just to get them to know them a little bit more. It's mostly what I'm doing. Otherwise, in terms of hobbies, I like cooking. I cook a lot.
Let's go.
I run. Mostly.
What's your favorite bread?
That's my... Well, I have to say baguette.
Yeah, it's. I mean, come on, that was a kind
otherwise.
Yeah.
You know,
get his French card revoked.
Yeah.
It's borderline bread. I will say, like it's.
What do you mean borderline?
It's.
It just is bread.
Yeah. No. No.
What?
No, like.
What do you mean no?
There's this very particular sense of what bread is to a German, I would say. And it's
all right,
like it's outside the linguistic profile of, you know, the baguette. It's like it's not baguette is
you're German pilled. It's hard to understand.
Dude, like a baguette is not something like you would put like anything really on. A baguette is more like you slice it and then you have it with something else, right? That's mostly how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, most of the sandwiches in France are made with baguette, so it's quite versatile. It was created for that as well, just to be used as like an everyday bread for everybody. But I've seen like German bread. I think we have a different definition of what bread is.
Okay,
very thick.
Can we Europeans stick together? I'm about to bring it up on the
No. I wasn't saying mine is superior. That's up to the people to judge.
Look at the stream, and please, Ascoft, I require you to tell me that this isn't baguette. What Eric just put on the.
Oh Jesus, no! Yeah.
No,
so it's virtually impossible to find. Yeah, this kind of stuff remind me of like the kind of what they call bread in America. It's impossible to find decent bread in America. I've tried.
I know.
I've been obsessed with it.
Are those the bread sticks that's really not bread, but they're sticks but not bread?
They're like dough. They're like toasted dough with butter.
Okay.
It's like not fair to call it bread. It's really not.
Right.
Okay. I'm not that
start of the conversation, guys. I love it.
No.
We had some
knows
big semantic arguments about what Joe deems to be bread, during the off season. You can tell the off season has been too long. We're going a little cuckoo here.
Weirdly enough, I've had the most arguments with Europeans around, well, I guess maybe former members of the European Union around semantics around food.
Right.
And I'll just leave that in the ether. And before we have any, fellow French people coming to attack Yiska, maybe breaking baguettes over his head, we have to thank the patron supporters of the show. So episode 283 is brought to you by our patron producers: Avril Vista Baby, Battlecrab, Green 5 Bean, Brosbot, Boohow, Picasso, Chris Hart 34444, Kasha67, Lolshin, Pork Chop, Sammy, Rexane, and our YouTube members: I am DRW, Brother, Adam L, Sagi Fumi, Ice Am Jello, Fire Omelet 6, AK, and Chris R. You want to talk about a thick piece of bread that dropped in this last week? The format is out. That's thick. It's juicy. It's a whole lot of info, and it was dumped on our plate.
Indeed.
Yiska?
Well, yes. I think there's. I mean, okay. It was interesting to me to see the reception of the community, and I think the principal features of this season format, as I probably anticipated, were too big for the community to really dig into the, minutia of what really is a little bit questionable about this format. Because, the big feature is now Contenders is much more involved, right? It's arguably the best point in time to make this happen, right? In terms of from the all team perspective. Because let's be honest, Contenders as a concept has probably never been worse, in a worse state of talent left in Contenders than it is now, right? Would you agree, Ascoft? Do you think most of the good talent has been absorbed into Overwatch League?
Yeah, already. It's horrible. I mean, I didn't check that much this season compared to last in Korea, but I've heard it's pretty much the same, although they must have some talent here and there that, is already picked up by usually O2, Blast, and Shock partnerships. But in Europe and America, for this year and the year before, it's been even worse than before. All of the good players are already in the league, and there's maybe one or two that remains. Most of these guys that are remaining left and right are not even near being 18. So that's kind of really bad, to be fair.
I also think there's a couple of other things, for instance, the demise of academy teams actually makes it sort of feasible to have this format without necessarily running into competitive integrity issues where you're playing in a competition. At this point, and this is still, the fact that it is theoretically possible is a problem to me. It's just not practically going to happen very likely this year, is that O2 Blast could play the Overwatch League finals against the San Francisco Shock. That's a possibility now. Right? It's not likely. Yeah. Now, go back 2 years, season 4.
Sure.
The likelihood of those two teams meeting in that bracket is much higher. And keep in mind also, this basically shuts the door on academy teams for good. Because you don't want to have that competitive integrity issue where you are playing your own main team during the competition, especially in the APAC region, where there, I think, if memory serves right, there were more academy teams for longer. But given the situation in the APAC region, it's very unlikely that we're going to have more of these. Right?
At least it feels like they kind of acknowledge the mess and they try to make something out of it, because I know at least the tournament, the pro and amateur tournament, was received with a lot of positive vibes from the tier 2 scene, because it gives them something to grind for, because Contenders was so boring for most of them. So when I talk to some of the tier 2 players or some Overwatch League players that went back to T2, they only talk about this. Contenders don't really matter, but they want to do the tournament against the Overwatch League teams. So yeah, it sucks, and it shouldn't be that way with the system they developed, and it should have not be that way if they made Contenders work the way they announced it to. Mm-hmm. But at least there's something for tier 2. There's not that much incentive for Overwatch League team to play in it, but I understand why it's necessary for the scene. Just maybe comes a bit late in acting for the tier 2. Most of the talent is already gone.
Yeah.
Close the games.
Let me run this statement by you if you agree with this, Ascoft. I thought that the entirety of contenders, including in the Pro AM and then in the APAC brackets where they actually play throughout the season, the likelihood of a team doing semi-well, let's say being top 5 in the region, the entirety of contenders, right? Like every team in contenders, any of those being able to reach that high is less likely than London doing well last year, even though we all agreed that London probably should have been last, at least by preseason power rankings, right? So if, or to phrase it another way, if a contenders team makes it into a top 5 position in any of those international compositions, be it the Pro AM, be it like the midseason or the grand finals, that's a bigger surprise to me than London doing well last year. True?
Yeah, I think so. I wouldn't be so certain about like the East region, but that's just because I don't really have that much information about how it's like. I didn't keep up that much. In the West, it's very unlikely, considering how stacked the teams are this year. But just the fact that, like, from a contender's perspective or T2 perspective, just the fact that they can compete against these teams, even if they're gonna get crushed, they're still happy to compete against good players. But yeah, I think it's very unlikely. Just a good show for Tier 2. I guess I mean, at this point, it's just like they've done so little for Tier 2 that anything that they do, you kind of have to at least give it a little bit of a good vibe to it, because maybe it's gonna make them feel like they could do more. Like if this tournament is well received, then perhaps they're gonna do more for Tier 2. But yeah, no, I would agree. It's it's likely that most teams are gonna get crushed, especially considering how, so far from what I've seen, there is like very little competition in Tier 2. You never know, but yeah.
I think
it's tough, right?
Like
it's difficult.
One underrated change is also the eligibility gate, right? Like prior to that,
right,
contenders was kind of boosted by a lot of these high-performing players not being eligible, right? Like everyone knows that Proper would have been in Overwatch League had he been eligible earlier. And so, like, a lot of top-tier talents still competed in contenders. We always heard, like, oh, these guys are splitting scrims against Shanghai and whatnot, right? This is no longer the case, also because of the age gate. So, and let's be honest, this would have been really spicy in, like, Season 1 and Season 2. But at this point, I think also our gatekeepers, so the people that let people or sign people into Overwatch League to compete at the highest level, they all also studied up big time. It feels like the people that give out contracts or make the approval, either like a head coach position, they are really well optimized. And it's really hard to see how there could be something that we don't know about Overwatch that can only come out of, like, a gigantic system of, like, natural selection, so to speak, of the contenders pool that the Overwatch League hasn't already known, right? Like, there's no market inefficiency where contenders could just surprise by finding GOATs 3.0 or something.
Exactly. No, it's very unlikely. But it's still a step towards the right direction into giving more something to Tier 2, right? It's very poorly done, and like even the communication around like the fact that we could sign players that are 17 when most of the rosters, if not all the rosters, are already finished. That's like a question mark. But at least they're taking, to some degree, I'm not so sure about the players being able to play at 17, but at least the making tournaments with involving Tier 2. I think that's like a right idea. The execution might not be the best, but at this point you take whatever you can have with Tier 2.
I know that this has been something that I think Yiska has brought up on the show in the past, and maybe the way that I'm going to frame this question maybe changes his mind. But the kind of concept that he's brought up was that, like you guys were talking about, the T2 talent pool feels like a well that's a little bit dry, right? Where we don't have a ton of water to pull from. Like the talent pool's a little dried up right now. So adding on layers like APAC teams being integrated as partners within the APAC region, having things like the Pro-Am tournament for the West, maybe even bringing back something like the Gauntlet or the Asian Pacific or the Atlantic Showdown for Tier 2. all of these systems, do you think that they, on top of one another, do you think that they kind of help to, in a metaphorical sense, replenish that talent pool and help develop a lot of these younger players?
So it's not really my area of expertise, but I would assume it would take a while, because if they implement all of that this season, the talent pool right now is still not enough. Okay. Even though some players came back, but it's not like we have a huge development of, I don't know, like how it can be in like the other games environment, right. I assume, where there's a lot of like 15, 16 years old prodigy that are like all mechanics, very raw, and then they need a team, a coach, or whatever. They need experience to become great players, right? These are the kind of profile that we lack in Overwatch. They take time to develop. In the first place, that's why everybody was so hype about Overwatch 2, at least from like a inside coaching perspective. It's like with a new game, free to play, maybe the younger generations will come, and then there's going to be like the talent pool is going to be refilled. But if they implement all of these good changes right now, I don't think it will have like a good impact instantly. It will take maybe
couple
years. Maybe it would never work for like players would still not come back. I would still like to have them make this effort, but there's a chance it's too late as well. But No,
it makes sense. That's kind of what you said, Yiska, right? And in the past, are you kind of still in the same mindset where it's like, not sure if it'll ever work or if it's just too far out to even tell?
I mean, it could work if this is just also transitory period. I think like what realistically needs to happen is we need to reactivate some of these other regions in order to really facilitate more widespread competition. I think there are some cool ideas how that could work. But yeah, it really depends. We have so many aspects to consider with the merger, right? Like that's out there, like the varying interests, Microsoft merger. Yeah, like what realistically, what can you do with the league? How much can you push? There's owner disgruntlements. Like there's only so much you can do, but like theoretically, yes, everything is always delayed, right? Like the impact of the reason why season 5 kind of slapped was because a lot of what came together was like academy teams, the fruits of academy teams coinciding and everything happening, like American Tornado and like the other guys like ATL Academy and like like O2 Blast and all of those guys just coming into the league at this, or I mean not ATL Academy, but like everything either came in the season earlier. The people that were really good at Overwatch had established enough, so we had veteran talent, but it's also like a lot of the fruits of what we put out in the season 2, season 3, season 4 academy team type stuff that came to the forefront. Also like stuff like Gauntlet. I feel like there's only so many pickings left in terms of like, could you even say Top Dragon, right? Like even the O2s, like all of those, there's some left, but I feel like it all came to like the peak of it was season 5, and I mean, let's be honest, like one of those academy teams to be almost won the season, right? Like one map away.
Pretty much. Pretty powerful stuff. I mean, it's difficult, but in a devil's advocate kind of way, because again, like you want a constant talent injection. You want more and more people trying the game, chasing that path to pro. Not to be a complete shill, but feeding that pipeline is super, super important. But in a kind of counterproductive way, and this is something that I think we've celebrated Overwatch for, but it's also kind of a hindrance in some facets. Because we have such a big turnover of veteran players, we lose a lot of those narratives, right? Is there a shifting of this viewpoint where, in the same sense that we're saying, yes, we're not getting a ton of like big rookie injections like we used to, where like in 2020 we had a crazy graduating class of rookie players, and last year very much the same way. Does that not kind of benefit us in some way in the short term by building up a lot of those, or having more connective narratives from just like a viewership perspective, where it's like, okay, all the viewers, all the general audience knows these players. They can at least identify with, their past seasons or maybe their past teams, and we can, connect as a viewer to, better experiences or more engaging experiences with these players that we kind of understand, if that makes sense.
I mean, yes, but it feels like pretty hollow, right? Like if there's no, to me, veteran excellence only feels good if the pressure is coming from behind where the rookies are pushing as well, right? You don't. That's the least satisfying thing of COD esports for me. I know for a fact that all of these guys that have been sticking around for 10 years in a hyper-competitive game like, let's say, I don't know, League of Legends or even like StarCraft 1 or whatever, there's no shot you find someone 10 years ago that could still be competitive nowadays. Just because the skill sets shape so violently, they would have to be like genetically engineered in order to play Call of Duty through all of the stages of the game's meta and whatever, right? Like that's very clearly down to an inefficiency in the scene, right? So that always rang hollow to me.
Yeah, I think there's also a problem, especially in Overwatch, where in Overwatch League, players tend to burn out compared to other esports pretty fast, have very short careers. So players burn out, they move on with their life, or the Koreans go to army, so they have like a big gap, and usually they don't come back. Eventually, if you don't inject new talent, so this system sucks. I hate it. I think the players could play much longer. I agree with Yiska that like you still need competition from the rookies to like challenge them, right? But I think with this proper healthy setup, the players should be able to play much, much longer. There is no cognitive decay or whatever until you're like very, very old that really affects you. I'm talking like 35 plus. Like you start having a decay from what I've seen in the studies around 24, but it's such a slow one that like it shouldn't impact your performance to play at the highest level of play. You could still play and you can still adapt. You can still have more experience, be more consistent and everything. So they should be able to play more, but they don't. That's the like reality of it. They burn out really fast and they move on. If you don't inject new talent in the Overwatch League system, we're kind of fucked because there will be no talent anymore. So you have a problem with that. They have to care about the tier 2 eventually.
No, 100%. And but make no bones. Like I think tier 2 definitely should get a lot more support, and we do need that. But it was like a weird silver lining that, interested to see your thoughts on.
Can I ask, do you follow any other esports?
From far away, relatively like what I follow is more so the performance psychologist in teams. Like I'm interested to see how it works for them, like how the players are different and everything. And I've been trying unsuccessfully so far to like get get more context. I've talked a little bit when I was in Boston with the coaches from our COD team at the time, just to understand like how it is for them, like how different it is for them. Like Overwatch in itself is very unique. Yeah, especially for instance here in the way like the players burn out so fast. In Call of Duty, I feel like I don't know the scene that much, but I feel like the players can grow much older and go back to tier 2 much more easily as well and come back in tier 1s. League of Legends, I'm not too sure, but I feel like Counter-Strike, for instance, like the players can play a very long career usually in like the traditional FPSs and everything. So no, I don't follow the scenes that much. I try to follow like what's going on around the scene a little bit.
I had for a long time had this theory around, I don't know if you know, a special skill. Special skill is like if you take an Olympic archer at the Olympic range, they are insane, right? Now you move the target just like 2 meters out and they lose a lot of efficiency. Now, you know what we do pretty much every other patch? We make the DPS move a little bit more quickly. Muscle memory destroyed. We make the model a little bit smaller. Muscle memory destroyed. We like take the time it takes for a Widow zoom in to get like the one-shot headshot. muscle memory destroyed, right? Like all of that, we constantly reset it. And when I asked, I think, was it last year? Yeah, I think last year. I asked CS players why they think their career is so long. And two of them that knew Overwatch pretty well and played it during a time just said, like, the reason why we can do this is, like, because the game doesn't change that drastically. Like, we can get away, like, all of my mechanical skill, a lot of it is crystallized. I just need to keep up with some aim labs every day, and that's fine. I just need to... But everything else is then can go into strategy. To be fair, there's another burnout aspect in CS, which is travel. That's a different...
Yeah.
They have a different pressure there. But I feel, and why I ask if you know other esports is, I feel like the amount of sheer practice and grind that a lot of these top players put in really isn't that normal on average. I think even in League of Legends. I follow this discussion around, like, now the West going to Korean blocks. I think they're still on 4-hour blocks or total of 4 hour. Of course, I'm not sure if that just means they need more review for each block and therefore their day is just as long. But like also looking at the Valorant aspects and everything, I just always am very surprised how every time someone gives me this data, it's on average 20%, at least less than the median that I know that Overwatch League teams practice, where now 3 blocks is established, right?
Yeah, no, that's a fair point, and I think I've heard some people talk about it here and there about but the amount of practice that we have in Overwatch League, mostly dictated, I think, by like the Korean standards of work ethic, where they just play, and they just players burn out in like 2-3 years, but they play extremely competitively for 2-3 years. So you have to keep up. If you don't want to lose, you have to practice the same, right? Which is something, for instance, with in Vancouver that I'm going to try to play a little bit with. Allow more time for the players to rest. Make sure that I'm mostly going to do like 2 blocks a day. Sometimes we'll have to play 3, but mostly do 2 blocks a day. We're like full focus on these 2 blocks. Reviews around it. It's still going to be relatively long days, but compared to the average in Overwatch League, I want to try and experiment with more rest time. But yeah, I think it was maybe I've seen like an interview. Maybe it was with you, Yiska, actually, of like maybe Gamba talking about it. Well, like he was talking because he went to Valorant and he was like, but I might be wrong. Don't quote me on that. But about like the fact that like Overwatch League players in general work much harder, but because they don't have a choice. I think I've seen it to the extreme, very, very extreme in Boston, where like we would work 10, 12, more than 12 hours a day, which is obviously way, way too much. And well, players burn out really fast and they don't play that well. The more time you put into, there's only so much they can play. 3 blocks, I think, is the limit. You go more than that, then they're going to start playing very, very bad because, I think that's a good point as well, what you were pointing out, Yiska. And I've played the game as well, and sometimes still it's hard for me to remember. The game is kind of draining to play. There is so much you need to pay attention to. The pace is super fast that I remember when I was playing, when you have to, if you have like some, especially if you have like responsibility in shot call, and when you're a good player anyways, you need to anticipate what's going to happen every fight and everything. So fast paced that like you play 2 blocks, you're already kind of fried. So I assume maybe in like some other sports it's more or less the same, where you have to put a lot of attention everywhere, but Overwatch just has so many of this stuff with like meta changing constantly, and super high pressure from like this high top tier that like practice all the time and everything. So yeah, that explains, I think, a lot of the burnout that happened in the league.
Yeah, it's a game that kind of chews everybody up and spits them out. It demands a lot.
It's also like, I think a lot of the regionalization keeps it from being that excessive in the Western leagues and league, where it's like you're not like you have region locking, right? Like you can only get so many Korean or Chinese players in. For us, it's like 60% of the league is now Korean. Therefore, you know who dictates the culture and sets like the tone for everyone, and everyone is constantly competing with everyone. Therefore, like there's no breaks on this train of like just really practicing hard, and especially like the cultural background where people aren't used to that type of grind. That's especially hard, and that's why I almost expect that is also why we saw the trend move more. Like we've been moving the needle towards more APAC players rather than less. I think I did the count of the... Okay, let me not mess this up. I think currently exactly 60% of the NA region of those that we know are Korean players.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. And that dictates the culture. I kind of love it because like that just means like we're, for a relatively young esport, I think like we've optimized for high levels of play very well. It's just like destroyed a lot of cool storylines.
It's just making... I mean, it's definitely, the narratives are taking a hit, but it's also finding the balance, right? It's about, you know, and this kind of rotates towards Ascoft and what his kind of views are with Vancouver. But it sounds like, you know, Boston was maybe a little bit too far, a little too close to the sun, a little too hot. So we have to cool it off a little bit. We got to back up and find that balance where it's efficient, but it's also, it meets the standard that, you know, Overwatch League expects it.
Can I really quickly flank in? And you can stone face this, Ascoft, but like from my information, you guys were also ridiculous in the amount of blocks that you were running. Like from what I know, like you even scrimped your academy team sometimes after everyone else was already done doing blocks with, and the other Overwatch teams are like, no, we locked off for today. Okay, academy team, let's go for another round.
Yeah. No, that did happen. Two proportion that are just way too much. I think it just that was when Laurie was head coach. Just in general, like the mindset that he had about it was very Korean about like you have to keep working. You keep working until you improve. To be fair, I don't like really. I mean, for sure, this way of working wasn't good because it was too much playing, not enough rest, not enough, you know, time to like for you for like to incorporate information and everything. But when you look at more successful teams that still work very hard, I assume Shock or that kind of teams that still have like a Korean environment, I don't really have the answer to that because for me, what I want to do with Vancouver, I want to play less, but I'm still going to do reviews because the way my reasoning is like you don't need to play that much when you have players that are really good mechanically. You need them to understand the game better. So I want to spend less time playing, more time thinking, more time for review and everything. So it's still, in general, still a lot of time practicing or like just in general having your mind on the game, because I don't have an answer to, you know, Koreans being so good because they spend so much time. They just win and we lose. So, and maybe it's like it's the same in like the other games. If I think about League of Legends, I've watched a little bit, so I might be wrong, but usually we get clapped, and then the other teams that stays are the Korean teams and the Chinese team. And the Korean teams and the Chinese teams work extremely hard. I assume so still in League of Legends, even though I have no insights, but I assume they work harder than the Western teams, and they're better. And eventually you want to be good. That's why you compete. That's why you spend so much time of your life on it. So, for sure. I mean, I kind of extrapolate, but for sure in Boston, that wasn't the right system. But still, I don't think the right system is chilling too much. You still just like maybe like a better optimization so that they don't have to play all the time. More thinking, I think, is the best.
I also really quickly, like, because I know that I am an empath for the outrageous comments. Like someone will quote like this one, like some one team that just like in League of Legends also goes out of their way and like practices as much as the top Koreans, and therefore the really important thing is like scene average, right? Like, is everyone grinding this high, this much, and therefore elevating the entire scene? That then has also like an interconnecting aspect where now your practice partners get better also because they swim more, and therefore like it doesn't matter that one or two LCS teams go really hard and get away from the field. It's about the entire field working super hard, or not super hard, but very effectively to whatever player type they have, therefore lifting everyone up, and therefore like, you know, just therefore becoming like an exponential effect of getting ahead of scenes that aren't as effective at it, right? So,
right,
yeah. I'm
I think that makes sense.
Preempting the like outlier posting, like.
I mean, that's never gonna stop people from doing it, but. I know, Ascoft, you brought up kind of sports psychology and performance coaching in general. Is there not, and Yiska, you might flank in here with the answer to this question because I'm looking for like, is there not like a theory or a term for like the learning through the rest, or like these intermittent breaks actually tend to help you perform better, or at least like retain information, or maybe even learn the subject matter at a higher rate? Is there not like proven studies that support that?
For sure.
Yeah, there are. I'm not aware of any specific about video games, but I don't think it should differentiate. Should be that much different from like anything else in life. I don't remember if there's like any specific term about it, but I did read about it, about just the fact that just by resting, allowing your brain to just process the information, you learn better. You just feel natural as well, with like experimenting a little bit with coaching and playing and everything.
Yeah.
When you play without stopping to think, it doesn't work. And when you do VOD reviews for 4 hours, it also doesn't work because there's just too much information you cannot process. So, yeah.
I think even anecdotally, I think most people will have those same kind of experiences where they'll like grind at something for a little bit and then take a little bit of a break and then come back to it and be like, wow, like I feel like way more confident. Like I feel like I'm hitting these shots, or I feel like I'm, you know, executing whatever task that I'm, set out to do way better than I have. Like that's kind of crazy. Maybe I should take more breaks, right? I feel like that's like a very human experience to kind of have.
I think that's what and it's very interesting because I don't want to deviate too much if you guys want to move on, but I'm finishing a master degree in performance psychology that I was doing part-time. And it's a good thing that it stops now because it's like I don't know how I spend time on that when we're working so much in Boston. I wouldn't do it again. But I'm talking a little bit about with some players. It's anonymous, so I can't give names, but I'm talking about like the impact of social media on performance in esports. And so I have knowledge of like all these theories about how do you cope with pressure as an athlete and everything. The players don't. Usually they don't really not super familiar with performance psychology, but when you talk about it, you realize like the coping mechanism and everything that the top tier athletes in sports do, they do it as well. They just don't realize it. So there's this aspect of kind of what you are saying, Volamel, of like they just by experience, they build these kind of mechanisms and everything that traditional experts have. They just, most esport players, when I talked about it with them, they don't even realize that they have these mechanisms, but they definitely do. I mean, you have no choice at some point. When you face such high pressure and you've been playing for a while, eventually you build habits, and tends to be good habits if you're still at the top.
Yeah.
Technically. Yeah.
Kind of hard to say whatever you will about esports or Overwatch as a specific game under the umbrella of esports, but having competition kind of is the grand selector of talent, like you said, like subconsciously, whether you know it or not, like you're finding those pathways that have been carved through traditional sports, through maybe even human evolution, that just get you where you need to go, let's say. So I guess in a natural way, like how does that incorporate itself within the 2023 Vancouver Titans? Obviously, it's lean and mean right now. 5 total players signed. A lot of familiar faces coming from your time at Boston. So is that kind of the point? Like, is this kind of also incorporating with some of those familiar faces where it's like, okay, I know my system, I know these players, they kind of work, right? Is that
Yeah, it's mostly it. I have my system, like we were talking a bit off about it, really based around like developing autonomy in a player. I want the players to feel like they are, part of the team. They have like a power in deciding what's going to be next for the team in terms of strategy and everything. Because that's the way I played when I was a player, because there was no coaches back then in tier 2. So you had to, nobody was giving you the answers, right? So you had to go for it. You had to self-review. And eventually when you look at it, even beyond esports, you take the example of a guy like, it's a very extreme example, but like a guy like Kobe Bryant.
Sure.
There is like so much YouTube motivational videos of him about how much he would tend to, at the beginning of his career, go and talk to players, other players that were better than him at the time, and be like, how do you do this move? Why do you do that? And everything. He was constantly looking for information, going to contact the coaches, even if he didn't know them, just to get more information, right? On his own, nobody was pushing him to do that. So of course, it's very extreme. But in general, I think it's the right mindset. If you want to be a good player, and I think all great players, even in the Overwatch League, they're very smart. You can take the example in Overwatch League. It's going to be a bit more of a discussed subject, but one guy that I met, Striker, for a short time, I think he's a great player. Obviously, he has like problems in terms of like his mindset and everything sometimes, but I could see that he was very smart about the game. It's not only that like mechanically he was very good. It's also that like in terms of how he understands the macro and everything, and how he's doing the effort to get this information. He's not waiting for his coach to give him the info. He's going to get it. So to go back to like the subject of Vancouver, yeah, I selected these players because I have a very specific system about developing autonomy that gives power to the players. So I need players that are like not dickheads and able to handle it. And I need players that are looking and craving for that kind of autonomy. That's why we were discussing as well a bit earlier. I cannot coach all players. I need this kind of specific players that are looking for this system. I know this guy from Boston would work in my system, and they didn't play the best they could in Boston because it wasn't the system that was in place. So that's why I brought them in. But even Luca, Speedily and Aspire, I've talked with them a lot as well, and they match the system. These are players that I really wanted to. So yeah, all thing considered, yeah, it's very much about the system that I have in mind and the players fitting it.
Is it fair? I think and this was definitely something that we kind of brought up prior to the show, but I don't know if we got like a firm definition. Would you consider this a more like the key here, the focus of what you're saying seems to be autonomy, and I feel like what the public is going to take from that is like, oh, Vancouver is like this loose team. It's not loose. It's not completely player driven. It's just allowing more of the power to go to the players. Is that kind of a fair?
Yeah, and it's still controlled. Right. There's still a part of autonomy, and like the last word is for the head coach, right? But you still want more players to go to the play, and power to go to the players. And I understand, like for most people, most people don't understand the coach's job. Yeah. When I tell them I'm a coach, like they don't understand. And even in the scene, the people that like some of the fans that follow, they don't even understand what the coach are doing. They think coach and manager are the same thing. So there's a lot of misunderstanding. It's all very new, this whole autonomy development way of coaching. But it's I think it's Phil Jackson. I read his book that had a good saying about it, because I don't know if you guys watched The Last Dance or read about his work and everything, but he had this kind of very autonomy-driven way of coaching as well, where he was involving the players, making sure that like the focus was more on unity. And he was saying himself that like he tried to have every player, even the rookie, have like some kind of responsibility in the team. And for the players, you have to think about it from their perspective. They feel empowered. They feel involved. They want to feel involved. Like, they compete. They want to be in a team. This is like more or less what they want. So then you help them as a coach to find balance, because when you give them power, obviously they shouldn't abuse it. But yeah, Phil Jackson, I think, had a great way of saying it, where like when you give up power, usually in the team, paradoxically, I don't know if it's the word in English, but you gain some, because just the players respect you much more when they see that you're not here to just be the top dog in the room and yell all the time. And so, but there's a balance to find, obviously. You cannot give up all authority as a head coach, but as I said, for me, the ideal system must be more towards developing the autonomy in the players.
Yeah. There's definitely been, I think, across esports as a whole, the schools of thought between like this very militaristic, where the coach is very strictly like leading the pack and all the players have to file behind them, and that's just a very rigid hierarchy of things, and then there is more autonomy. There are more loose styles, and it kind of, like you said, it depends on the group of people and the players, right?
Yeah, definitely. I'm not saying for me it's the best system. I'm not saying it's the best system for everyone, especially because we have such a worldwide league. And for instance, Koreans in general tend to not understand the system, because it's absolutely not the way they've been raised, and like the system of values and the way they see, the whole power thing. So sometimes it doesn't work for them. But even in like very, very rigid system that I've seen some Koreans do, there is sometimes still a autonomy part. There still is trust from like the head coach to some degree. It's not as developed, I guess, as like in like the autonomy supportive Western style. But even in very rigid styles, sometimes the players are still getting yelled at a lot, but then still have a really good relationship with the coach outside of the game. And the coach talk to them and be like, okay, so when I yell at you, they're like, I wanted you to know this and everything. What do you think about it? I've seen that happen even with Laurie sometimes, where like, he would tend to be very, very tough. Not that Laurie was like the best, obviously, with the results we had, but I could see that even in a very tough situation, there was still some development of autonomy for the players. I think in general, it's inherent to like just human that wants to grow and be listened to. But definitely for some system, other people, fully autonomy or like mostly autonomy supportive system don't work for them.
Yeah.
Can I ask? So, okay, autonomy development. My sister has a 1-year-old, right? And there, it's very like transparent, right? Like
coach my nephew.
Okay,
what does he need to do?
There, I understand it. Okay,
a billionaire.
There, I understand it. Like, okay, he spilled something. You give him the napkin, or he can't reach everywhere where he spilled it. Okay, you lift him up instead of doing the clean yourself. Therefore, developing his autonomy. He can't necessarily like the places he can't reach. It's not like he can stand there and grow 3 centimeters, even though I will say sometimes it feels like he does exactly that. Like I turn around and he has grown another one. But like, I understand it there. How do you do that with basically adults?
It's very different actually, and I mean I'm very, very not familiar with how autonomy is developed in children, and I would tend to think that you need to be much more restrictive, and you cannot be fully develop the autonomy, because I would tend to think, but I don't want to go too much in the subject. I don't know much that the children needs barriers around them, so a figure of speech, of course, to grow. But the guys I have are adults. They've been thinking about the game and about the players I have at least thinking about the game, about how they want the team to be for years and years and years. They have experience with it. Usually what they need is someone that let them express themselves. So it's much, much easier for me because I don't have to teach them everything. Usually the players know how they want to play and everything. Sometimes they need to be like guided towards the right path, especially when it comes to think about like, handling the responsibility of autonomy for like how you talk to your teammates, how you bring up subjects, how you like not to sound always super negative, how to be honest but still not sound like an asshole. This kind of stuff, usually they're not super familiar to. They need guidance. Otherwise, when it comes to autonomy in game, about what they want to do in game and everything, there's a player's feeling at this level of play, and like they understand the game. At least the players, again, the players that I wanted and that I had, they think about the game all the time. They do that literally all the time. They don't stop. So it's just about like bringing all of the ideas together. But usually, autonomy supportive only means that like you can unleash them, and then you try to guide them so that it kind of works together. But there isn't that much teaching to do in itself.
More
the way I see it, at least at this level of play.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I remember like an anecdote from I don't know if you know Andrew Huberman. He's like go
stare at the sun. Yeah, we know Mr. Sun Stare.
Right. So basically his point was like the best human emotion. You would think like the best human emotion is like arriving, right? Like winning the Overwatch League, and in that moment, that's the peak human experience. And if I had a button that could consistently reproduce that feeling, I would hit that all day, every day, right? It's not necessarily true for most people. What button they would actually hit most every day, all day, is the button of emotion of, here's a task that is decently challenging, but I am capable of achieving, and I believe that I'm just about to. That is peak human emotion. It's not arriving. It is just being that far away from it and having the capacity to, right? And that really struck me. Like, is it a lot of like reframing goals and whatnot? Is it like, okay, I assume you guys didn't like say, okay, we're going to necessarily win the league next year. Like we're up against like some pretty sick teams. I remember like Christopher saying, okay, realistically, guys, like, look at us. We look at our budget. Like, it's us against the world. We barely can't lose, and therefore, like, they were then able to outperform their resources. Is it this smart reframing sometimes?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting thought. Brings me like a couple ideas. Yeah, like, definitely. I mean, I like what Christopher did with his team. Obviously, the way he like used the narrative of everybody thought London was trash to like fuel some motivation. Obviously, yeah, like very rookie players that were like very overlooked at. So it worked for him that way. We're discussing a bit off, but I don't think it's necessarily what I'm going to do with my team, just because I don't think it would fit them that much. But in general, in terms of like goal setting and everything, that's interesting what you're saying. It's like it's a concept as well in performance psychology that you don't want to put goals that are unattainable. You want goals that are reachable, that are hard, but reachable, right? And then you want to make him progress. They reach that goal when you put another one that is a bit higher.
Mm-hmm.
So I never thought about it like in a very philosophical way of like, that's what really drives you. In general, in my coaching, I didn't set up a goal yet, and I don't think I will. The players have theirs about like, I want to reach, playoffs, I want to win this or that. I would tend to try to focus from my point of view and like the point of view of like staff and everything. We're going to try to push much more for focusing on the process. So you focus on the process, you practice well, you establish very good basis and everything, and then the wins will take care of itself. That's just like personal experience, because it's like just adding another useless external pressure when I'm like, okay, we really need to get to playoff, guys. From my perspective, I mean, from me as a coach, I don't think it's needed that I say that, because they already have this drive. I think it's much more comforting when your coach tells you just focus on practice. The win will take care of itself. Especially when you start having like a few years of experience in the league, you have to focus on the process. It cannot be only about winning, and if you don't win, you're absolutely crushed, right? So you play the game. When you win, that's great. Usually there isn't much to learn. Sometimes there is, and when you lose, then you get something to learn. So you set up new goals, keeps the machine going.
Mm-hmm.
There's one thing.
That's kind of like the way I say it.
There's one thing that I hear in what you're saying that I actually never thought about, and I still love, and I think that's the growth vector going forward. Because you guys remember like where Houston Outlaws had this thing where like I think it was with Monty and like the back and forth like like should we be playing goats even though it's very unlikely that we're ever going to be the best in the world, or should we play something else? And then like some of the Outlaws players said you don't know what it means as a competitor to have to say, okay, we can never be this good at that, therefore like let's go another round. And then eventually I think Chengdu at the latest proved that you actually can succeed by just playing your game. And then eventually, I think Shanghai, at least like season 2, stage 3, where they won it without playing goats, proved that that it's absolutely feasible to go there. So okay, we now have accepted that sometimes your best strategy is not to play the absolute meta strategy. That's true for London and whatever, right? Like, but it's to play the strategy that's best suited to your team. Okay, I think that's now accepted knowledge in your Overwatch League. What is not, doesn't feel that accepted, and what I hear in you saying is like, let's not just play what we're best at, but let's practice in the way that our team functions, right? Like how the character of this team, how we're made up. And I actually like, if someone tells me, okay, we're maybe only going to do one block today on Tuesdays or whatever, that is like, I wouldn't maybe, based on what you're saying, immediately say, okay, you guys are lazy and you're not going to make it. But like, why? Okay, explain to me how you're going to lose that time, or why, what is the idiosyncratic like attribute about your team, why that makes sense, right? Like, so do you think like this is the way forward, just like really clearly delineating or defining what your team is good at and what it really needs in terms of the character of the players and maybe the psychological makeup of the players, what they're searching? Is that the new growth vector?
Yeah, I think so. I think in general, just as a coach, that's what you need to focus on, just the process of making sure they always grow. I think the when you go in depth about like strategy and like playing a certain composition or like dodging it and playing more to like dodging the meta, playing more to your strengths and everything. Personally, I tend to be on the side of like meta doesn't really mean that much. You should play to your strength. That kind of depends, but you have to match this reality with the fact that the players, they also want to show that they have flexibility. As you said, Yiska, sometimes for some players, it's hard to say, we cannot be good at this composition because their competitor, they always want to win. They want to be the best. So when you go as a coach, again, you go to a player and you're like, no, we can't play this composition because, our Reinhardt isn't that great. We can't play goats. If I go and say that to Punk, for instance, even though Punk right now knows that like his Reinhardt is not the best, still gonna hurt him because he wants to be good at everything, right? So there's a balance to find, but that's like my job, I guess. But yeah, otherwise, aside from that, focusing on the growth, always goals, always for like individual goals and team goals, focus on the process. That's like the best way to make sure that you win. When you reach the match day, the impact that you have as a coach can be great sometimes, where like you make the right call or you motivate your players, and like, or you see like there's a flaw in the strategy of the enemy, and then you fix that, or like you abuse that, and then you win the game. That happens, but you cannot consistently rely on it. What you can consistently rely on is just the practice and how confident you get your players to be, how well you make them play, how much good feedback you give them, and everything. So that's just what I tend to focus on. In general, it works because then you relieve also a lot of pressure from just the official and focusing only on the official. And plus, it's probably like the best way of doing things so far from what I've like, tried to get in terms of reaching knowledge, reading books from what the other coaches much more successful than me did. So yeah.
I want to kind of gas you up a little, Ascoft, not just because like you took the time out to come and hang out with us for a little bit, but I think this is the first or one of the first times. I think the only other time that I feel like I've really had somebody answer that question was probably Christopher. Even like because I followed some other esports, like I've tried to like really try to get a grasp or at least loosely follow like League of Legends and other team esports, and there is this like idea of the process and like, oh yeah, the system, and at times the jaded part of me feels like it's just a buzzword that people kind of throw around, where it's just like, oh yeah, trust the process and yeah, my system. And it's like, okay, but what does that mean? Like, explain, like where what is your system like who are you, what do you want to get into, like what is your coaching style, what is that philosophy like? Nobody seems to like want to get into it, and this is like a very candid isn't the word, but it's honest. I feel like you're very honest approach here, and I think that's something I think you kind of have to respect, right? Like I respect it about you.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, yeah, the process in general, it's always going to be a bit vague. We could go in details about what I do and everything, but yeah, I mean, I remember even at some point in the season, my players was kind of minging because I was always saying focus on the process and everything. But I think in general, the players, especially the ones that I got, they do understand that, practice is what makes perfect eventually. Even for them, I mean, I don't want to diverge too much from like the subject and everything, but practice is like the number one source. And it's like it's something that the players believe in. It's also something that is like in a theory in performance psychology, is like practice is the best source of motivation and confidence. There is nothing much better than practice and making sure that like you know what you're doing and like you feel confident about yourself. Like I was citing Kobe Bryant earlier on, and it's still the same. You can find these videos online where he says like, someone asked him like, well, how is it that you always feel so confident on the field and everything? And he's like, well, I never make a move that I haven't done 100 times before in practice, right? So I always feel confident because confidence comes from preparation. So I think focusing on preparation in general for a coach is the best because it relieves a lot of pressure from yourself as well. And it just, the whole process. That's like the process, I think. Just making sure practice is right. You have the good team environment and everything.
Right. I'm sorry, this is my psychological makeup, but I gotta little bit try to poke holes into that, because okay, I understand like four or five people of you come over from Boston. You know what you got. There's one established player that I mean, maybe you had a say in like keeping him around. Maybe that was something the org wanted. Also, like he's kind of like seen as this. I don't want to say king of Vancouver, but certainly the best player probably last season in Aspire, right? So here comes the most unfair framing, right? We have a player that we know he has some cockiness, at least like that's what the reputation is here. He has been the outstanding player. There have been rumors about him maybe wanting to go to another team to join up with friends. And allegedly has been denied or whatever. I'm not sure if that's true.
Yep.
Like, and now that guy also needs to fill your puzzle that all the puzzle pieces that you have assembled. Is that going to work?
Yeah, I think so, because as I said, like I have my system was like the most important thing to me. And then obviously I have to make it work with what Vancouver wants. But when Dennis recruited me, like he told me like, yeah, Aspire is staying. And I was like, cool. I think he's the right player and everything, but I just need to make sure like, he's going to be able to work for me, with me, right? And he's going to like understand my mindset, because as I said, like I cannot coach every player. So maybe he doesn't like it and he wants another system. He prefers a system that is more like, whatever, just different. I had a very, very long talk with Aspire. I remember the first time I talked with him, just to explain to him like, this is my system, that's what I like, and I like try to get his experience and everything. And the first time we talked for like an hour, because he was like relating, I think, to my system. And I told him like, if you don't feel confident in this system and you feel like it's not going to work, you don't want to be in this team, I don't want to force you to be in this team, so we can trade you. And yeah, there's the only thing that has been is like this thing with the team that you are talking about, Yiska. It didn't work out, and it wasn't on our end. We tried to make it work because he asked for us. Like he was like, respecting what I wanted to build, but there was like this thing with his friends and everything. That's fine. Didn't work out on our end. He's still staying and he still believes in the project. As I said, like I had conversation with all the players about, this is the system that I'm going to build. I need to make sure you fit in, because as I said, like a system that is based around autonomy with the wrong players, it can go bad very fast. So, and same discussion with PDD, which is why I'm happy to have them both on the team. Even though you're right, for Aspire, technically I didn't have a choice, but I did, because we agreed, Denis and I, like if he says that he wants to go away, he doesn't believe in this team and everything, we'll try to trade him. But he did believe in the team, so that's why he stayed.
For sure. And presumably, like, he probably could have gone elsewhere, but chose you over those guys. Elsewhere as in other than the obvious one.
Yeah.
So, there's to me, there's some confirmation that he wants to be in that system. But yeah, that was the interesting one. And it's also, like, in me, just like having seen the pattern, like, this in the same way, I always feel like a team like the Toronto Defiant are, and the team that, for instance, ATL had last year. If you're off to a bad start, that's kind of that you have to fight really hard to get back, because as the momentum gets rolling in a team like that with that type of internal atmosphere, that runs itself, right? Now, what do you do if you lose the first 3 matches? Can you trust the process then?
I don't know. I have no idea how they're gonna handle it. I think it's very, very interesting to have them in the league, but I don't know how Castellet think about handling it. Like, it's his goal, his job. That's the team he wanted, I assume. So I'm pretty sure he has a plan for it. As I said, for me, like that's the kind of team. I don't see how I could have like any positive impact for them. But there is like different systems that exist that can work as well. So we'll see. I won't go too much into this subject. Really, honestly, in general, I just focus on my team. What the other teams are doing, not so much.
That makes sense. It's probably best to understand your team at the at the premium. Like, you need to put them first. So in that same way, you kind of alluded to Sugarfree, and obviously his legacy, let's say, within NA's tier 2 scene as probably one of the best rookies coming up from a long time coming. I think a lot of people have been waiting He's been absent from the tier 2 scene for, I want to say, at least a year or two. Yeah, since early last year. So what was that kind of recruitment process like? I know that was somebody that, again, everybody was, excited to see, a name that, was very, I think the Vancouver Titans Twitter engagements shot up quite a bit that day. So you kind of walk us through what that approach went.
Right. So that was probably the most complicated one, because for all other players, I had an idea of how they were, and I had like data and confirmation that they were good players as well. Because obviously like Speedy was very, very good before, but he was like 14 to 16, and then there was like a 2 years break, right? All of the other players, obviously the guys from Boston, I trust them. Aspire, I know, was a very good player already, and I talked with him, and I know that he was on the right mindset. Speedily, I had no clue of really knowing if he could still be good, so it was just like a feeling that this kind of talent usually don't go away, and he could still be good. He was grinding ranked a lot, and I could see that consistently he was playing well. I was watching his stream a little bit and everything. But most importantly, so I think in terms of talent, there was no direct confirmation compared to the others, but we still trust that he would be good. And then it was more on the how he's as a teammate. That was kind of hard to get, because even we didn't hear anything bad about him, but even if we did hear something bad about him as a teammate, he was 14 or 15, so how much can you really blame him? So you can't really know. So again, it's the same kind of stuff. The first thing I ask is I want to have a conversation with him, and then so I explain my system very straight to the point about what I wanted it to be, what I expect from my players, what I want to put in place. And I've had some talks with some players during the off season that we were kind of interested in from a performance aspect. Sure. They were really good. But when I had to talk with them about what I wanted to do with the team and everything, you can feel that it's not something that they really, it didn't click that much, know.
It didn't connect with them.
Not that much. And with the players that we had, and Speedily as well, I felt like he did connect. So, and it seemed like nice kid, really eager to play and everything. So, because obviously I keep talking about how it's important for me that the players fit the system, but also wanted good players, because I want to win. So, and the skill is very important. You can be the great best teammate that you want and have all of the good mechanisms and everything in place, but if you cannot play well, you're not going to win.
Yeah. What are you doing, really? For sure. And correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe I'm just speaking out of school here.
Did I say? Sorry, I just said. Did I say Speedily? Because I meant to say Sugarfree this whole time.
Yeah.
In my team, I don't like using nicknames, so I always call him Lenny, right? So I say Lenny, and then that's the only player that I almost never call by his nickname. So I don't know why, but my bad. My boy Lenny, if you're watching this, sorry. I was talking about you, and I'm very happy that you're in the team.
I think Sugarfree, I think everybody on the team, right? They have this it's not weird, but it's everybody here has gone through, for lack of a better term, some shit, right? Everybody here is Overwatch resilient. We talk about Punk, we talk about Faith. Crimzo's been in the league for God knows how many years. Sugarfree's been playing since he's in diapers, it feels like. Aspire went through Toronto and still, is persistent. Yeah. Is it surprising to you, or maybe that was something that you wanted to select for, right? When it came to this just hyper resilient, really, really hungry, they got a little dog in them. They really want to compete. They want to, showcase their talent. They want to win, right? And it's that drive that's pushed them this far. Is it strange to you to see it that the commonality between all the players? Is it, or was that
no, that was very thought about already.
Okay.
I was kind of looking for, obviously with Vancouver and the budget that we had, you have to look for players that have not yet reached their full potential. You cannot get the absolute top tier players and everything. So the ones that I were looking to have mostly, and that's why I got with Punk, Aspire, and more or less all of them, aside from Speedy, which is kind of not Speedy, sorry, but keep fucking up, but Sugarfree, that is kind of apart, because he comes into the league, it's going to be his first year, he kind of performed already, which is why I had to have like a specific conversation with him, because he was doing good with Atlanta Academy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Before. All the other ones, they had performed in bad teams. So that shows some resilience, and that kind of like, I think it's a strong motivator as well.
Yeah.
When, they feel like they could be better and they could like perform better and bring better results. And now I give them an opportunity to do so, right? So I'm kind of looking for that like intrinsic motivation. I think it's very important, because you can one thing that you cannot really impact that much as a coach, as much as we would like to think we do, is really motivation to play. So you can create like a good environment and you can have like motivational speech and everything, but the very intrinsic motivation to play and the guy that like wants to compete, this you don't have that much impact on, like the very thing that makes them motivated to play. And I think when you have a player that is very competitive and he had this kind of life experience that these guys had, aside from Sugarfree, it like is a good, for me, relatively stable proof that they want it for next season. But for Sugarfree, I'm pretty sure he wants it nonetheless. He seems extremely competitive in everything he does, so I'm not so worried.
There's no question when it comes to talent. And then when you look at his pedigree coming up from the ATs, the Atlanta Academy, you said, even grinding. I don't know how many times it doesn't surprise me when I see a post on Reddit where it's just like, oh yeah, Sugarfree is like number 1 and number 5 on the NA ranked ladder. It's like, yeah, like this kid's talented. Like I'm not one to like look at streams and like try to get into the eye test of them playing on the ladder, but it shows, right? If you can consistently place in those ladder positions on top of, as a piece of evidence to support how good you are, there's something to it, right? It's the kid is incredibly talented, and I think playing Overwatch this long, it kind of has to put some maturity on you. It puts a little hair on your chest. I feel like it's the trenches out here. So if you've gone this long and you're still eager to compete, I think he's probably among really, really good company, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think if it's the project. So no, I'm very happy to have him on board, especially because also I have a lot of. I mean, you can honestly call all of my players veterans, considering the average length of a career in Overwatch. So it's good to have like fresh blood as well. Even though Sugarfree, I mean, he's kind of a rookie because it's his first year in the league, but he also has prior experience at very high level. But it's still fresh blood, so it's good. I like having balance in general, just in general as well, in terms of like how they live their life, because they have apartment there and everything. Just having, if Sugarfree needs help, just setting up random stuff about like his apartment or anything, just getting into the habit of having good routines in the morning and everything. Having players that have already went through like shitty situation or like woke up 10 minutes before scrim, then they realize it really sucks hard, so now they have good routines in place. Just teaching by like example. I really like this dynamic in general, which is why it kind of sucks that we don't have more talents coming up.
Yeah, it's a weird case in the Overwatch League where yes, he's a rookie, but also he's like really
Not
essentially
rookie,
like in
as close as a rookie as I'm gonna get.
Huxal was a rookie, right? Like because
big bunny ears on that.
I remember like he was in Krefeld with his parents in 2019, I think it was, playing Atlantic Showdown back then. Like that's 4 years ago now. It's been a while for sure.
Yeah. It's true.
Still taking names though. Is there? I think we kind of talked about this prior to the show, but I think it's only fair that we bring it up. Obviously, we brought up Vancouver being lean and mean right now. Is there any, foreseeable future? Is there any plans to maybe expand the roster? Is there anything that you can kind of speak on publicly?
We'll see. Not so much right now.
Okay.
The whole concept of the team that I really liked about, obviously we talked about it before, but I don't really like that much the idea of subs in esports, just because they tend to just sit and watch scrims compared to traditional sports where they can be, involved in the whole team process and practice and everything. Most teams now don't have academy teams anymore. And even when they had academy, the academy teams needed to be competitive enough to play with the main team, and in which case you could include the subs and everything. That's fine. But I don't like the idea of a sub sitting and just not being able to play. It creates a bad dynamic as well, I think, in the team between the guy that plays and the guy that is on the bench. And usually, the guy that is on the bench ends up dropping massively in skill because he doesn't practice. So the gaps widen and widen. And at some point, like the sub is kind of useless. He gets the press. And, that's not really what I liked as well. So that's like the whole idea as well, with like, that's the discussion I had with the players and the trust that I put in them. And everything is kind of like linked together as well with like the budget that we have, and we still wanted a good team. You had to make choices as well with like there were specific players that I really wanted, and I got all of the players that I wanted, but they have to fit in the budget, which is not that bad, but it's not enormous compared to some other teams as well. So I'd rather have these 5 guys than 7, but then I have drops in skills, right? Because I want to win games, so I'd rather have that. And then if there's complication mid-season, we have a little bit of flexibility around there to like add a player or anything. But right now, my number one plan is to go with these 5 guys. And that's like what I told them as well, is like, unless something really goes wrong during the season, here's my trust that you're going to perform at the beginning and that you can play, for instance, for Punk, that we're going to put you on main tanks if it's needed, if it fits our style and blah, blah, blah. Same for Faith on flex support, all that kind of stuff. And same for like literally every other players, to be fair, even though it's less of a like a big change. But even if it's for like Sugarfree or Aspire, if they want to play new heroes and everything, that I'm not going to bench them for like the third player, I think it is very important for the players. And it was, I think, like a big motivation for some of them to join as well, to feel that trust and feel like, okay, I'm going to play. He's going to trust me that I play.
I mean, it kind of, not to completely circle back, but it kind of speaks very true to what you said, and you quoted Phil Jackson with, right? You gave the power to these players, you put the trust in them, and you get some reciprocation from that, right? Like you're allowing them the field to say, look, like you're gonna start 100%. Like you there's literally nobody else behind you that you can't start. So they kind of have to rise.
Although Phil Jackson had subs, so I don't know how he organized that and everything. But yeah, just my system is very specific and tailored towards like Overwatch and any sports in general, what I think is best. But I'm not saying it's like the best for every team and everything. If you have bigger budget and everything and the right system, you can have subs. But I'd rather not for my team. Yeah.
It's also because the downside here is, and I think we've seen that in a couple of teams. And I think there's probably a pretty high correlation between having 2 tanks and doing pretty well. Like, I don't think Dallas wins the season. Maybe with Hanbin, like, having... Okay, that's maybe an outlier, but I think the ability to flex Hanbin Fearless, pretty big. The ability for maybe to bring in, like, Mickey for Shock was probably not inconsequential there. Some teams felt gate-capped when the meta switched wildly. For instance, like, Houston in the Doom metas and whatnot. So it feels like you will be at the whims of meta to a decent degree, right?
Yeah, I think it just it's a gamble on my end of how much can the players are able to play like all the heroes that they're supposed to play in their pool. So I'm thinking mostly about Faith and Punk, because they're the ones that have to flex the hardest.
Sure.
It's a gamble on my end because also, I was talking in general anyways about the fact that I wanted to have like 1 very good player. I'd rather have 1 very good player than 2 worse, even though I can cover more heroes on paper. So I trust this very good player that I know his work ethic and everything, that he can play the other heroes and he can learn them. Obviously, there's going to be a learning phase. And to play them at a good enough level. It's, it's the gamble I had to take, and I don't mind taking it. It fits like the whole project that I had and everything. So in general, I'm pretty confident they can make it work, and we can make it work. The whole thing about like, we're not gonna necessarily force composition as well. We're not comfortable on and everything. We'll see what happens. I cannot talk about strategy and meta yet. We haven't started screaming yet, but
no idea even what.
In general, I'm not. Yeah, even though I can understand the criticism, and I know it's a gamble, but still, if like there's if we want to play a rain composition, we're gonna play a rain composition. Or if you want to play double flex, I'm not gonna let that get in the way. Yeah.
I think that's kind of like a very modern Overwatch, right? Like I think these like sub roles between like flex and main supports are kind of bleeding away. I think obviously it's difficult to expedite that process when it comes to the single tank stuff, but like there again, like a lot of the tank pool has to be opened up and the demand is high.
Right. I think that's just my take though. In general, the things are gonna have to go this way a little bit more, I feel like. That's just my perspective as a coach, especially for like the tank role, with how, unless you have a system where you can make two very good tanks work together, and you need a very, very good system for that, where like the tank player usually brings so much tempo and so important in the communication and like in general mindset and the way the team plays. Unless you can swap two players around and they still don't impact the team and like the team works good in both ways, it's much better, I think, to try and develop one guy. And like eventually most of the players, I think, want to play everything. Like when you get very competitive players, they don't want to be subbed out because another guy is better at the role. They want to be like, hey, no, but I can play this, don't worry, and everything. Sometimes it's ego talking and everything, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. So for me, from a coaching perspective, I'd rather make this transition. Maybe, maybe it's not going to work, but I do believe that it will. Like I can understand the external criticism, but it doesn't really matter to me because I'm pretty confident in what I want to do.
You've been around, somebody like Punk for quite a few minutes, maybe hours, months, seasons, let's say, right? Like you've probably got a good feel for what he can do, and I think he did bring out a little bit of the main tanks. Some, not a ton, but some of the main tanks last season, and still looked efficient. So I don't think it's out or it's without some actual evidence that the audience can kind of see.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, there is still a part of gamble, but it's just like for me, from what I know from the player and everything, for me it's a pretty winning gamble. So yeah.
I'd say so. And then even still, right? Like I know that you talked about like not necessarily forcing any compositions that you don't feel comfortable with just because you think it might be better, vice versa. But like I think this is a team that does have like a very distinct style to them, right? I think there are these metas. You talk about a gamble. The flip side to a gamble is you hit a jackpot, right? I think there's a very clear jackpot with this team that I think you can hit. That you might be one of the best teams. Maybe striking for top 5 as much as that might make Yiska cringe, but I'm gonna call a spade a spade. You put a Sigma in Punk's hands, you put a Zen in Crimzo's, you give Faith a Brig, DPS feels much more open. I think there's a real possibility that you guys can punch out.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. As I said, like in terms of how we're gonna handle that composition and everything, it's not yet been discussed. Maybe you never know what's gonna happen in the season. Maybe we realize one composition or one tank doesn't work for us, and one flex support doesn't work for us. We're better off dodging the meta. I'm not putting any rules on that. We'll see. No. But yeah, I see that there is potential. That's why I like this team a lot.
Yeah.
Because I think in terms of pure skill, mechanical skill, I have possibilities.
No, and I think it's important that you have that those resources in your back pocket. God forbid, something go wrong with one of the players. You find out that you do need an extra set of hands at whatever position it needs to be. It sounds like you do have the flexibility to possibly bring in somebody, but it's not necessarily in the cards at this particular moment. It's a good thing. I think that's probably a safe bet for the future and something that you guys have planned for. So
I will also say, like, if you look at rosters across the league, I think a lot of it will be gamble this year, right? Like there's not that many 10, 12 player rosters anymore where you can like run 2 entire teams. I think a lot of gambling will be happening. It is just, I feel like it's almost disorienting. At least, like, if I put myself into your shoes and I think I could be doing the same level of job, and in the one parallel universe, we hit, I don't know, 3/4 of the season we're playing Sigma and Zarya, and the rest of the season we're playing Monkey, or the other alternative position is we're playing only Monkey all year, like, and that has nothing to do with your individual performance. It has everything to do with what kind of meta is dominant, right? Oh. And it could be swaying, like, I think as much as, I don't know, 7-8 spots, maybe, in the global rankings.
Could. Hard to tell.
Maybe. We'll see. I try. Yeah, it's. I mean, it's an interesting thought for sure. It's the kind of thing I try not to think about too much. I just see what happens, and especially because I do believe in like trusting my players that they can, learn the other heroes and everything. But whatever happens, I'm kind of just waiting. In general, I try to stay much more. It's gonna sound a bit cheesy, but to stay in the moment, see what happens. And so I read the patch note, and then I decide we'll decide with the team what we do. But I cannot. And it's the same thing for like having goals for the team for like what's gonna happen for like the end of the season and everything. I try not to do that. So yeah.
There's not much you can do with the feeling of worry, right? You can't do much with anxiety. There's not. What can you do, right? Like you're in the off season.
Yeah, and as head coach, I mean, I've seen it happens. Our coaching in general in the Overwatch League, you have to consider burnout. So you have to have mechanisms in place to make sure that you don't put too much anxiety on you. But in general, yeah, I think it's just relatively natural for me not to be bothered too much by this kind of stuff, like what could happen, and what if the meta is not right for us and everything. Which I guess, yeah, just lucky for me, I guess. I have flaws in other ways, but I think I was relatively lucky that in general it's relatively easy for me to not be bothered too much by this kind of stuff. But yeah.
I mean, I'll take a note from Eric here. While patches or future metas might not like weigh on you, is there maybe a team out there, maybe your former team that you might want to take a rivalry with? Anybody you're looking forward to playing?
I mean, it's the only team could be Boston, but they changed the roster and everything so much that at this point it's just a different team. So
right.
Not really. I think it would still be fun. Had a little bit more spiciness to win against Boston, but it's not really a real rivalry. Like I don't hate anyone there. And anyways, there is like, even if I had some beef with other people, they are not here anymore. So it's just like a full different team. Still fun to win against your old team, I guess. I don't know. I'll see. I've never been in this situation to play against another team. I've been in this Boston for 3 years, so we'll see what happens.
You hear that, Toronto? He's not even clocking the other Canadian team. Like, don't even worry. Like, they're so far above Toronto Defiant. Like, it's a wrap. Like, that's the kind of confidence 2023 Vancouver has.
I mean, I understand. Like for just like content in general, like it's good to have this kind of rivalry. For me, honestly, it doesn't matter. It's like another match.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, like you have to give 100% no matter what. But Toronto or like any other team really doesn't matter.
Makes sense. No, it's very on brand. It's on brand.
Is there almost more rivalry for you against a team like London because they're like in a sort of similar resource position? Christopher already did what you tried to do in your first head coach position. Is that more like something that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Not necessarily. I think a bit more of the reverse. There is respect. Not that I disrespect like the other coaches and everything, but the other coaches I have less affinity with. I do respect what Christopher was able to do, and I can like kind of see like that we have similar values, and he managed to, compared to me, so far he managed to make it work, right, and everything. But I don't necessarily see that as I have to prove that my team is better than his and I'm handling things better. Because as much as like obviously there is ego when you're a coach, I feel like it's a bit weird when like the players are playing and like you're responsible for like the process and everything to focus on like, oh, I'm winning more than this coach. I think it's like relatively normal and natural for players, but a bit weird for coaches unless you have like real beef with someone. But a guy that I respect usually, no, I don't see him that much as like, competition in that sense of like coaching in terms of coaching at least.
Yeah. What's another interesting idea is always to think about, like, there are some teams where the coaching imprint, like if you're playing against a particular coach's team, you know who coached that team. Like I hear it very often about Changun. Like there's always something crazy coming out. Like you can never really predict it. Like everyone has like a smirk on their face when they're playing against his teams. And like it could both be like a frustrated one and like a happy one. Is there like a coach that either you like look up to in terms of like how they approach it, or where you very distinctly like or dislike the style that they put on the table?
Honestly, I mean, in general, as I said, like I don't bother too much with like the other teams. But the only one that I felt like was really interesting, especially because I was having like a relatively hard time in Boston with like the team dynamic, and seeing Christopher doing really well with like very low resources and like all of the kind of like the EU stuff that when we played at the time, like we were like brought up with, and like all of the experience obviously get like coaching in really good teams, seeing him make him work with like focusing on the process, focusing on making a good teams, really good routines for the players. The players are very bonded together and everything. I was like, yeah, that's cool. Aside from that, obviously there is a lot of coach that I see, people like Rusty or like all of the other teams that are performing, Rush and everything. Like I can see that they're very good at what they do, but I don't know them that much, and I don't have much insights about what they do, and I don't really look for this insight in general, because it's just the way I work. Kinda like I try to just only focus on the team in general to like a very relatively extreme degree of like I've talked with like some people, and it's very different reaction in like the players. For instance, when you're out of a tournament, my team is out of a tournament. If there is no strategical interest for me to keep watching, like say the patch is going to change, and we know there's going to be a drastic patch, so the meta is 100% going to change, it's very likely that I'm not going to keep watching. So this is done for me. I'm just moving up. And I know like some of my players or like some other coaches that I've talked to, they like to keep watching because they like keep being involved and everything. For me in general, it's just like my team, and then whatever for the rest. If there's no strategical advantage, I don't really know why I do that, but it works for me.
How about socials? Do you keep away from the socials? Do you hit the Reddit?
It's the same.
Okay.
No, Reddit I've like uninstalled for like 2 or 3 years. And then Twitter, I tend to almost never use it. And like that's a perks, I guess, that you get when you are head coach compared to players. Players have to have some kind of social. I mean, you could argue coach do too, but I'm fine with doing without. Especially now that I'm doing interviews about the impact of social media on esports athletes, and I'm like, asking a lot of, at least in different games, not even only Overwatch, how they feel about social media and everything. I'm like, fuck that. It's not for me. It's just the way I see it, and I think it's just not worth it for me.
Yeah.
And I don't really have that much interest in social media, but I understand why some people would, but it's very double-edged. Well, like you can get a lot of support, and I don't want to rely on that for motivation or for confidence of something that I don't control.
I'm running another theory. Right. That's a crackpot theory, but it's like, okay, it was once again reinforced. I listened to. Do you have an idea who Afromo is in League of Legends?
Yeah, I do.
Like he had an interview on Visionaries, like the Jacob Wolf podcast. And I swear, like that's a guy that has, for the Overwatch viewers, had a decade-long career, has sustained himself in all kinds of meta in League of Legends. Support player, like when support was weak, Afromo was there. When support was the hard carry, Afromo was there. 17 different AD carries later, and like now he has retired. That was the most boring interview I've ever heard. That dude is just like, he just like has the most milquetoast answers of everything. And I feel in my soul they are right, but I also know that guy isn't reading Reddit or like reacting to anything in the community, is like trying to overextend himself and have a hot take and be relevant there, right? Like in essence, here's my take on this. The more professional esports gets, the less interesting inherently it unfortunately becomes to viewers, because we don't have these characters. Like if I look at what the best player necessarily is, and as we professionalize, that's a guy that never really is forced to interact with the community, never has, or even has the urge to have any spicy take on anything, because they just believe, like, in the middle way that's probably, like, all the wisdom is out there. Like, what your grandma told you should do, that's actually the best approach. You just don't want to hear it because it's really boring and it doesn't get the dopamine going, right? I'd rather have that potion, that quick hit where I can get the improvement from that, rather than listening to the established approaches, right? Like, either I want, like, a quirky solution to a common problem, or an uncommon problem and a usual solution. Other than that, my dopamine is not being spiked here, right? So my theory is theoretically, like, the optimal way for a absolute top player to be is boring?
That's a good question. I don't think I have the answer, especially because in terms of, like, social media, how to handle this kind of thing and everything, it's really not my area of expertise, especially because I myself don't use it that much. And I think my personal opinion is, like, it's more of a bad thing than a good thing, but it's just the way I view things in general. And for players, they cannot apply the same solution that I do of, like, not giving a fuck, because they kind of have to some degree have a presence online. But yeah, I mean, I'm not really sure. I think in general it's hard to build content around you, especially in the Overwatch League, that is kind of, like, restrictive of, like growing personalities and, like, BM and that kind of stuff. I don't really see how, but then again, I'm really not that competent on the subject, so I think I'll dodge.
As a fellow incompetent person on the subject, I'm gonna speak out of school, and I'm gonna say, and be the outlier Andy here. I think there are some people who can thrive in the shit posting and the social media and the banter and the BM, and maybe even can thrive off of it. But for the vast majority of people, yeah, it's probably best if they're boring. And I think, as this goes across the board in most aspects of, whether it be content creation, coaching, what have you, the more broad of a spectrum of personalities that you get, even the more boring ones become admirable. They become affable, right? Because they're just different from the norm, right? If the norm is to be, outlandish and, saying all kinds of crazy shit, the more suit and tie, the more professional you are. I think that attracts, a certain demographic, a certain type of people. The issue that Overwatch has at the current point in time is that we're a little bit too homogenous, right? We're a little bit too suit and tie. We're a little bit too, collared shirt. Yeah. When you do have a little bit more personality, there is, there are adverse effects to that, but there are, really, really strong positives to that. And I think it benefits a lot of different people. It just kind of depends on the type of person you are, right? I think that's the boring answer, but the true one, right? Like, either you're a mango or, and forgive me, as a Frenchman, this may seem, blasphemous, but is there not, like, a very famous, like, Counter-Strike player who, like, kind of just is very flippant in his practice, but still is, like, incredibly good? Played for G2. I want to keep saying it's Shocks, but it's not Shocks.
I wouldn't be able to tell.
Just French players?
Yeah.
That's erratic?
Is there? No, what? No, not what?
Or that's like a hot type of personality? No, not
really. Not a hot type of personality, but somebody who's, like, who approaches the game a little bit differently when
Apex
it comes to, like,
is
practice.
The only thing that I can imagine.
I don't know. Maybe I'm describing
here's my thing where my theory comes from that. And why I think, as an esports fan, if you're not into the inspirational type of, like, growing incrementally every day and looking at inspirational characters, and you're not deriving value from that, you're probably out there for yourself. But, like, here's how I perceive Device. Device is, like, for a long time, Device was the best player in the world. Astralis was his team. The way they got there was a performance psychologist came in. Mia Stelberg is, I think, her name. She just, like, stabilized their mental. She stabilized their routine, and therefore they built confidence. And then they won everything for the longest time and probably are still the most dominant team of all time, right? And Device is like the type of guy that wakes up at exactly 7:45, gets 10 minutes of sunlight into his eyeballs, then drinks his athletic greens, goes to the gym, does exactly the type of workouts that he has to do, sits at the mouse, does some stretches. Oh no, not the carpal tunnel. Nope, we're not doing that today. Then like the aim labs for exactly like 2.34 hours, then scrims start, and that's the entire day. And then he goes to bed at 21:45, and like the day is done, and none of that was interesting. But he's like the best in the world.
He's the perfect player for a coach.
Yes, yeah.
You say that, and I dream of players like that. But yeah, but I guess they also just the whole business that I'm not really comfortable with, and that's why I'm glad being a coach and not a player, is that it is competition, and what drives you is competition. You just want to be the best. You don't necessarily want to be entertaining. You're fine with having a highlight on you, but for the way you play usually, not necessarily on like having like a huge personality and everything. But it's competition, but people watch competition because it's entertaining, so it's entertainment as well. That's why I understand that, like, there is some attempts at like making personalities or making rivalry between the teams and everything, even though it's like kind of like weird to me. I do understand why it's like that, but for some players I can assume it's like a problem where like they don't really want to be that kind of person. They just want to compete. They want to play the game. They want to win. They don't really need to. They don't want to entertain that much, but they kind of have to, because otherwise people are not watching the league, right? Yeah. So it's a tough situation. That's one where like you really I'm of no help to the players on that kind of subject, and I'm really fine if I have boring players personally, but I don't tell them to not use social media, just not during match days, I just warn them about the problems and everything, but it's really not something that I'm comfortable with, really.
Makes sense.
For sure.
Any final topics, Yiska, that you want to dive into with Ascoft? Anything burning? Any other theories? You want to get into bread again?
Not really. I think what I think what I always want to know, and yes, you haven't spelled out a definitive goal, but like, what do you think? What is your threshold for success this year? What is the maybe not tangible like X place, but where do you want your team and yourself to be when everything's said and done?
Okay, from like a very selfish point of view, I know it's going to be hard this year with like the way they revealed the world system to be, but I would very much like to go to playoffs. Right. That's like just my personal goal, and I think that's probably going to be I know the goals of all players. That's why I was saying like I'm not going to make that a team goal, because I already know they have this goal for themselves. And I think for a team structure, like the message to send from like the team leader, it's not good to say like, let's go to playoffs. We're going to go to playoffs, don't worry, and everything. I think it's better to focus on the process. But I know they have this goal anyways, themselves. And I kind of do as well, but it's just, something that I try to not to focus too much on, because it's just expectations. And then if you only focus on like winning, you miss the big part of what makes you winning, which is practice, making sure like the team environment is good, and focusing, because as your head coach especially, you need to focus always on like what's going on with your team. If your players are like really not performing, then if you really have this goal and you really hold on tight to this goal of being in playoffs, you're going to start freaking out, being more anxious, and be like, oh fuck, he's not performing, maybe I'm going to like be a bit nervous as well. The player's going to feel that and everything. You don't want that. You want to always stay calm. You want to be like, okay, maybe he's having a bad day, maybe it's because who want like his girlfriend yell at him in the morning so he's not playing well, that kind of stuff. You need to be able to kind of have a clear head,
sure,
and focus on like what you want to establish. So I try to not focus on that too much. But yeah, if I had to give a goal, I want to go to playoff.
Are you going full throttle on the Pro AM as well?
Yeah, but that's just kind of a weird thing in general. Aside from like the whole player thing, I try to focus on what I want to try to get my players to do, even though it's always hard, is to always focus on like one match at a time. So your next goal is always, okay, we have this next match coming up. This is our focus. Let's try to win this one. So make sure that like, we're prepared. Well, in the case of the tournament AM, it's a bit odd because we're gonna have, I assume, maybe multiple match. But in the regular season, it's like one match, maybe 2 matches a week. So you focus on these ones, you win, you lose, and then you move on to the other match. So it's like much more focus on immediate future and present, which is what I like, and be like, okay, focus on the next match, and on the next match, what you're going to focus in the first map. And then once you get through the first map, we focus on the second map and everything, just to get them in this kind of mindset of focusing on the present. But for the AM tournament, it's a bit weird because it doesn't go towards that much the Overwatch League in general. But as I said at the very beginning, it doesn't change that much in the sense of it's a showing. There's going to be people watching and we're competing against other people. So we all want to win. So I think it doesn't matter if we face Overwatch League team or tier 2 teams. I want to have them ready. As soon as there is an official match, we need to be ready to play, no matter against who, really.
Makes sense. I think it's that's always an interesting narrative when it comes from like a fan's perspective, because it's like, you know, it's very common, it's very easy to just assume like, oh yeah, like how hard are they trying, like yeah, you're gonna see more subs maybe, but they're in the same way, like you're dealing with people that want to compete, and
yeah,
that's a driving motivator if I've ever seen one, because who wants to be the one to lose against the Shanghai Dragons? Who wants to be the ones to lose against the tier 2 teams, right? At our very core, we can be the most happy-go-lucky person. We can have the utmost best intentions to our fellow competitors, but who wants to lose?
Yeah, and yeah, as we discussed, you know, in general, yeah, it's like the players, like it's not an excuse to say like, oh, we weren't really trying. There is no way you get someone competitive and he's not trying the rematch, even if it's against, like, he can be like, some of the players, I could understand, the Overwatch League players are like, fuck, what do we have to win really in this tournament? You know, aside from the prize money, you know, we're playing against tier 2 team, is not going towards the Overwatch League. And for them, their goal is just to win the Overwatch League. So it doesn't really matter. It's just like a distraction to some degree, right? So I could understand that, but at the end of the day, they're still going to play because they still have this pressure of like, no, I want to win, and there's going to be people watching, and I don't want to lose in front of all of these people, even though, and especially if the team is bad, because I'm going to look bad. So I don't think there is a way. I would be very surprised if a team doesn't try in this tournament, an Overwatch League team, I mean.
Tough one to get in front of those egos and be like, yeah, no, I'm gonna kick back and relax and lose to an amateur team. Yeah, that's definitely gonna fly.
Yeah, and for what? You know, it's the beginning of the season. Everybody's fresh. Everybody wants to play. You know, it's not like it's mid-season and like the people are kind of like, and you want to send back. But so there's no reason really.
It will be used as cope, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, I mean,
we
of
didn't
course,
take
like,
that seriously.
Yeah, perhaps.
It's a very convenient excuse, but is that really what's happening? Let's be honest, probably not. Probably. But I think as we kind of wrap up here, I don't want to take up too much of your evening. I know it's getting a little late. I want to give you the kind of the platform to, you know, speak to any Vancouver Titan fan, any you know, anybody maybe even sitting on the fence that's looking for a home, you know, as a fan. You know, what is any messages to them, any send-offs for the 2023 season?
Oh, that's a good one. No, I think in general, yeah. I mean, as I said, it's kind of hard for me to. I kind of have to be as a head coach, but it's kind of hard for me to like relate to the fans and everything in general. But what I know for sure, this team, we're gonna like the whole point is to create a real team. There's been, I think it's been like a subject for many teams rebuilding this year. And to be fair, I think to some degree, teams like London and Dallas kind of like showed the path last season about how much real team play could like elevate your game. So like the players that I had talked with, they all been in like very bad situation in terms of teams and everything. They really want to create a team. We have nice players. They're all like really good, great guys and everything. And we're gonna. The goal is to create something bigger than just the sum of ourselves. So like if you're looking for that kind of stuff, that's the only sell point I have, because in terms of content and everything, I don't know much. Some of the guys are fun, they stream and everything, you should check it out. But for me, the most interesting part about this team is like I have 5 guys that really wants to create a real team, and they're going to be involved in everything. So, and you know, in general, strategically speaking, we're not going to be afraid to play anything. It should be fun to watch us play. So might as well try, you know.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's it kind of stems throughout the entire building process. A lot of, even this episode of the podcast, I think it's very like consistent with, everything that you're saying, everything that, you believe in the system that you've put forth for this team. It feels very, like you said, more than the sum of your parts, and a proof of concept for a lot of players that haven't been given necessarily a fair shake. So I think I won't speak for the both of us, because maybe Yiska has a differing opinion, but I certainly hope you guys do well for this season.
Thank you.
Yeah. And Yiska, any final thoughts? Anything you want to add in?
I mean, the part that hopes to win the Lord bet, of course, hates a lot of what they heard today. The part that wants Punk's parents to be happy, of course, likes what they heard today. I think like my prior was a little bit assumed like that you're now more increasingly likely to be right, Joe. But we'll see. Like of course, there's always like there's this team, and then there's the rest of the league, and it's getting interesting.
Certainly is. It's going to be, I think we say this every season, but it is one of the most interesting seasons for a number of reasons. Different from seasons in the past, that's for damn sure, but an interesting one nonetheless. So yeah, I think this is a good place to kick out. Ascoft, thank you again for spending some time with us and chewing the fat, talking all kinds of stuff, going into sports psychology and obviously, the upcoming Overwatch League season. So thank you. And thanks for watching. We'll see you in 284. We'll see you next week. Adios.